Okay, Tim.
Hello, my name is Tim. Thank you for coming. What I would like to share with you right now has a scope that I would like to be challenged on this approach, and that I would like to work to a consensus level with you. The way that we are looking at the topic is derived from a business development perspective, because based on the management method, it's called crossing the chasm. And this describes basically the situation in the world that we are in right now. This means that we are in the phases of a certain product life cycle, where it changes from tech enthusiasts to some kind of a mass market adoption that will develop in certain steps. And this management methods defines certain rules. They are basically coming regarding what is the best market to choose, what is the product, and what is the channel to become a de facto standard by usage. This means that you don't have dead wallets, you have people and organizations and things interacting with each other. So when you enable this, this is the missing link and the way that we are looking at it. And based on this, we would like to show you how we plan to deliver these solutions and what are the premises. And I would like to explain this like in a pyramid structure. So I give a very big picture first so that everybody knows which topics I will be, or that we could go in deeper if there's any interest. But I would like to start with the big picture first, okay? And what we thought about first is we try to understand the responsibility that we all have because we work in an area regarding identity, what is a human right? And therefore, we have developed a certain code of conduct. This, for example, you can see, I don't know whether it's really visible, but in the PDF downside, you see that we have the highest level of conformity, basically to all rules and regulations, and that we kind of strictly obey principles that are being developed and further on developed by the mentioned partners or the principle itself. And therefore we came to the conclusion that the strongest one is that we have to measure all our actions, all the architecture that we think about, all the modules and systems that we are using, they have to obey that we have to preserve the human rights of all the time. So this is like the boundary that we are working in, and also the self principle of governance, besides other forms of governance that make sense. Number three, the triangle of trust. I think we all know about it. I just mentioned it very briefly. You have, from our point of view, three important stakeholders there. You have the holder. This is the holder-centric view. This is us, like the customers, usually people that interact. You have verifiers, usually organizations, but there can also be other institutions, and of course you have things. But in our model, we integrate a so-called authentication agent. The authentication agent will be more deeply explained by my colleague Jochen, but the authentication agent that we add, like, let's say, if we would think like a chess player, we put a new figure on the field that has not been there before. The authentication agent is the interface, the gateway from our real world, where we all have credentials, where we all have proven credentials in paper or plastic, to convert this, to bring this on the chain. This is the solution for this, and it can be delivered on a state level, so the highest possible. Why is the triangle of trust so important? Because in order to deliver the goal that you become a de facto standard by usage. This means that you have to understand the needs of the verifier. The verifier are the ones representing the use cases that you see in 3C. So one-click fulfillment can happen. You have various companies that offer continuous obligations. You have bank partners, telcos, price comparison sites. So those are the ones that must accept the credential that is provided to them. Therefore, you have to understand this. Let's say that when you're a fisherman, you have to interview the fish. So what bait it needs in order that it can work with it. And the credential concept is really, really important because we have, I think, found a solution that is zero knowledge proof. This means it can prove without revealing, but not by a complete technical mathematical approach. We reach this by design, how we generate credentials. And we do not really put anything regarding the user on the chain, although everything can be proven, and therefore we are GDP conform because we never touch anything that includes GDPR, but it still works, what is really cool. And at the end, if you are interested, all the use cases that are underlined, real estate or telco or gaming, are ones that we are working on putting live right now. Live means that they work as a smart contract, for example, with one-click interaction. Okay, this is like the pyramid thing to describe what we are talking about. And I would like now to hand over to Jochen, if this is also okay for other attendees here. If there are no questions, you can just always interrupt me and jump in. Otherwise, I would kindly ask Jochen to introduce the conceptual idea and the functionality of this onboarding gateway for credentials from the world that we are in right now on any ledger, on any DID, on anything.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Yeah. So what is the gateway? How to onboard the credentials? So as Tim described, we are basically in the progress of working or bringing live, bringing people into this ecosystem we are developing. So currently we are working with several partners, which in the first batch, they will help us to bring something in the number of around 10 million potential customers into the network, which are already KYC certified. And this, so to say, will be the first batch of people which we, so to say, welcome on our platform. Obviously, it's not something where we force them on in the platforms, but we invite them, so to say. The benefit of inviting them and inviting this first batch of people is that they already have, as I mentioned, this KYC process done. So there is a certain amount of credibility about the data which is stored about the people. So things like addresses and other information, which is then later on relevant in doing processes and businesses and yeah, certification processes in the system. But obviously, the system will not work if we stop there, because it will only work if it is kind of a ecosystem which is live and where people, yeah, the amount of people will grow. Not only the amount of people, but also the amount of information which is, so to say, stored in the credentials, which Tim mentioned. So those credentials are not only what is stored today on your identification certificates and things like that. It can also be other sorts of information, like your certificate to be a trainer for certain sports, things like that. really things which are related to you as a person and which as of today are not yet digital, because all the technologies which we are currently discussing also here in this conference, in this space, they enable you to store your credentials in this field. But the tricky question is, how can we address people today and kind of digitize their credentials, their papers, their certificates, which as of today are still in an analog level. And one of the elements to onboard people and to help people to digitize, so to say, their analog life is something which we call the gateway, the IAMX gateway. This is an apparat we are currently developing. It's you can think a little bit like those self-check-in machines on the airport, which means it has a very precise reader for documents, every sort of document, but also passports, obviously. It will be able to process the biometric data. And it has also a camera to figure out that if you put a passport on the table or on the scanner and you are standing in front of the camera of the apparat, that you two are the same. The person in the passport and the person standing in front of the camera are the same people. So the technology used here is the same, which is used at certain border controls where, let's say, some sort of biometrical data is processed on an automatic level. So it has this kind of state-proven credibility or security. So this combination of scanning documents, doing a photo or doing a video, and reading the biometrics and figuring out whether the two people are the same, the people from the passport and the people standing in front of the machine, this is, so to say, the base layer. And then we can say, okay, we have a certain trust in the person standing in front of the machine is the right person. And then if the person puts down, so to say, one of their documents, let's say from the university or their trainer license, something like that, we can say, okay, up to a certain degree, we can say we have trust in this document and we can create a credential for this document. So we can help the people to bring their analog papers, their analog goods into our system. And obviously in the next step, or I mean, this is, so to say, then the way how we can address people, so to say, on the go in the city. And you can think about it a little bit like the Postidentverfahren. This is something which is used in Germany, where you go to some sort of authority. For us, it's the former post offices, so to say, where you show your passport and the document, and then they give you give you, so to say, a written credential that you are you and that you wanted to do a contract. And our aim is to digitize this process and to bring it to the people, into the places where the people are going to do their shopping, their buying, where they spend some of the time during their day, and that we really have a low entry barrier for our system to get more people on the platform and allow them then later on to gain the benefits which are described in the use cases.
Maybe I can add something, just an example of how it would work. Let's say you want to prove that you own a certain piece of real estate. Then in our world that we are living in, you usually have a piece of paper from the land registry that has your name on it and a certain number, 4711 maybe. And then this document is scanned, and this hardware and software device leads to the highest scientific possible authentication level. So you know this document is true and it's not fraud. And because it has a name on it, you have to add your personal ID. So you have a combination of the source also with your personal ID from the issuer state. And because you're standing in front of this machine with this biometric camera, and because of the data possibility connection to this form of ID that I'm just talking about as an example, you can also match whether the person standing in front of this hardware software machine and the one on the ID that is on the scanner is the same. And this is the only way when we would issue the credential that is then biometrized, and then it we ensure that it reaches the holder wallet or whatever he wants. In this case, we enable everything. We think that this form of interface to the blockchain is needed because from a holder-centric view, and I'm putting on holder glasses right now, it frustrates me that the issuers take so long to give me the credentials in a digital way that I want to use. Therefore, we just give them the opportunity to do this onboarding. Onboarding is completely free. There are no costs behind it. So this is a very important form of having an interface to the world. Any questions on this so far? There's another thing that is really, really cool about this hardware and software combination is what happens if you use it in development countries. The numbers are between 1.7 and 3.9 billion people who are without a real identity or something that really works. And if you look at identity from a philosophical point of view, or maybe there are some gamers also here, to me, the identity is like Minecraft building block number one for prosperity, for life. It's you need this, to prove ownership. And why am I saying this right now? Because this hardware software combination gives them the hardest and coolest and best form of identity. The most solid one, the level 0. This is the face. This is the iris. This is the fingerprint still enrolled. And on a level, again, that is already accepted state level. It has approval, for example, for Appendix F, FBI, what is concerning the fingerprints. So you have something that delivers an incredible quality. And coming back to this business development approach now, why we also have to do it, why we have to understand what the bait is that the fish wants. This is where I said in the beginning that we have to understand the verifiable credentials that are needed from the verifier's point of view. And most verifiers, in order to enable them to interact, they need a very high level of the attributes that are needed in the real world in a way that they have been checked by a very by the highest possible manner. And this is what we are delivering them. Therefore, the core competence that we try to contribute to all of you, so we are looking, for sharing everything for free, and then we find nice models, is that this enables a direct interaction to the companies that Jochen mentioned. The 10 million customers are from Germany, and based on this hardware software business that we've been in another venture in the past 3 years, that we have developed a relationship to mobile phone carriers in 48 countries. And therefore, the onboarding via telcos has a very, very high probability. And it is also possible for, let's say that you would be the CEO of any telco company, and you have to think, and usually it would be a public relations disaster if somebody would write, okay, they're putting customer data on the chain. The only thing that they can cooperate without calling this public relations a disaster is that we have a certain, very easy to understand transformation, deformation, so we have a certain conversion process to convert attributes from the real world in a yes/no way that we can describe now if you would be interested in it, where we never cause any GDPR touchment or violation, and therefore it is possible that it can be used. And in one of the last meetings we have been in today, Timothy Roof said that the vendors will develop solutions that even his grandma can use it. So this is also what our business development is about. The enabling doesn't mean that you look at your credentials like at Mumbles, which one do I selectively disclose, which one not. This is like in concludent behavior structres. So this is how it enables. This is why both sides, the verifier side and the holder side, save so much time and money, and why it has the highest form of convenience. Okay, any questions so far from this long monologue from me? Maybe a question to you. The detail level that we are presenting here right now, is it something that you can understand? Can you fully follow from a rational point of view what we are saying and how we are approaching our joint industry?
So I'm just checking the chat. There was questions how we compare to two different companies. As an example, it's Affinity. No, it's Verif and Onfindo. Those two, I don't know. I mean, we checked several companies which are doing similar things. I don't think there's probably still some we don't know. I think what we try to achieve or what we try to define is to develop this, let's say, marketplace solution where we create a solution which is safe and secure for the customers, for the holders, but which is also easy for the clients. I know that there is also other technologies or companies working on that field, but what we are also working on with the different companies which Tim mentioned, like car rentals, so companies where we already have some sort of established relationships with, is to invest time also in the use cases. So if there is something like reusable KYC, how can we improve the concrete checkout process at a car rental company? How can we improve it? How can we make it faster and better for the customer, for the holder, but also for the company? This is what we are aiming for. We are certainly not the company who is leading edge or the people who are leading edge in developing the next generation of SSI technology and base technology. Therefore, we are always open for people, for collaborations and working together. For us, it's really about how can we use it to make the life of our customers, so to say, better, of the holders better. How can we help them to have a more secure data processing? I mean, on a theoretical level, I think the benefits are more or less well understood. But what we really try to achieve is to get this kind of a toothbrush test checked off. Means like what we are really trying to achieve is that our solutions are really clicking, so to say, in the daily life of our customers, because we think, and here we come back to the point, I think, which Tim mentioned at the beginning, if we want to help SSI solutions to be a success, I think we have to give people a certain, almost instant benefit. Because before I went into this project, I've been working at the telecommunication sector. And I mean, this is just kind of an example, but in the telecommunication sector back then, it was the time when things like WhatsApp and so popped up. And we've been working on super secure communication alternatives like chats, messengers, and so on. And whenever we talk to customers and ask them who is into data security for communication, everyone was like, yeah, I'm in. And then we said, okay, who's using WhatsApp? Also, everyone said, yeah, I'm in. So there's this learning that people kind of care about it, but at the end of the day, they also like the ease of use and yeah, in that case, a network benefit. So the way how we want to attack it is to have this kind of secure foundation, which Tim outlined, but combine it with something which is really attractive for the people as from the perspective of daily usage, because we think this is key. So
Jochen, you have one more minute because Mike has raised his hand, okay?
Yeah, this was already basically the end. And yeah, Mike, thanks for your question.
So far, the presentation seems that it's kind of general guidelines for the SSI verifiable credential community to say, as a whole, as a group, these are the things that we want to do to help push along the adoption of, verifiable credentials and sovereignty of the individual, right? That's kind of the general gist here.
The goal is that we want this idea to be challenged, to work to a consensus. We want to do it right, really right. We want to do it, we want to be the good guys. And we want everybody to invite to collaborate and to participate also from this. Therefore, we share all this, let's say, the credential model, how we really do it to make it zero knowledge proof. So we are very, very transparent. We are very, very open also how we work.
Okay, so yeah, this is really a call to action for the whole community. Let's go out and make these things useful to the common man. And so a couple of things I've learned about that. Sometimes you end up with a chicken versus the egg kind of problem. Which came first, chicken or the egg? Who comes first, the issuer or the verifier, or the holder? And so one thing that can be useful is to try and work with at least a couple of parties from all the different parts of the trust triangle. Say, let's get an issuer on board, let's get some verifiers on board, and let's make a solution for holders so that we can start to get this flywheel of interaction going. And then, like you said, as a community, we have a real features focus, and we have not communicated benefits very well yet, especially to people who will never pay any attention to the features, who won't understand it or just don't care. So if we can, set up an ecosystem that is a flywheel and a little world to itself that will eventually grow, if we can communicate benefits, then all the technology and the ethics and the governance and the care that we've put down as the base layer will start to reach people in broader markets.
This is correct. And this is why our business approach is business development, because this is overspanning the stakeholders that you just mentioned, that we talk to verifiers, because this is, to me, in my always simple way of seeing things, it's like we would both own a marketplace at a nice place, but it's completely empty. Then from a philosophical point of view, we have to manage balance. Let's say too many buyers, not enough sellers, a problem. Too many sellers, not enough buyers, also a problem. And but you don't sell a car, or you have not bought your car the last time because the salesman has explained you so well how this engine functions. Right? Maybe he's told you how much horsepower the car has and that you look really cool in it, but it was not a functional thing. So therefore, also this business development approach is all about, you know, saving time and money for the customers, and to have the greatest convenience on earth. I mean, one click fulfillment is great. It's like when you're on a price comparison table and you order a mobile phone tariff and it's there the next day. It's like when you go to a rental car and you open it with your fingerprint because you, as the holder, wanted it this way. It's like when you can put real estate on the chain, you can use it as a collateral for backing a stable coin. You can get a loan on it, you can inherit it. So this really makes it possible, and the this bandwagon momentum, how it's called in this approach, but I can really understand this model of life cycle development will lead, because we have the real use cases, okay? And this is something that we would like, you know, to manage with you, to consider, and therefore we also, this is the main reason why we have this big code of conduct below, because we want to appreciate the groundwork that you have delivered in the past 10 years here. And this, you know, we need this DNA in this model, because the probability that this drives mass market adoption is very high. I would put everything on it.
Perhaps we, is there some place where anyone has like brainstormed use cases or benefits that, you know, kind of a marketing crib sheet for the other people in the community to kind of latch onto and utilize? That might be a resource that could be useful to everybody. Say, hey, we got to communicate benefits if we're going to get adoption. What are some of the benefits that someone else has described? Because that could be a shortcut, especially for people who are more technically minded, to try and get this across the bridge, you know?
Yeah, the ones that are underlined are the ones that we are working on. And when you look at a model like this, I think the great thing is, like, independent of the certain areas of the industry that we are in, everybody can understand, you know, the use case from a holder's point of view. So let's say a game like Far Cry, in a smart contract that holds the key to open it. So you have no fraud, and you also have a perfect secondary market for the gamers to sell it, because it's license based. So wherever we currently address the real life world industry, they understand that it's disruptive for their internal processes, where they really save time, money, resources, hardware, software. And it can also all, basically in every e-commerce and membership model, be easily converted and perfectly executed in a smart contract. And by the end of October, we will have, you know, this first one-click fulfillment live for a mobile phone contract, just to prove that it works. And we deliver this on the basis of a standard shop, because the verifiers are in the real world. They are web-based. They worked with e-commerce shops like Shopware, for example. So what we are building can be used then the day afterwards by everybody. This is how we work, and this is also how we would like to collaborate with you. We would like, you know, to set the right standard, because this pulls up such a big amount of momentum if you adapt a tool from business development with the goal to enable mass market adoption.
Yeah, maybe one of the other examples, I mean, one of the things we are really looking in is to rental processes. So if you want to rent a car, every time you have to prove that you still have a valid driver license. That's something which the rental company checks in order to give you the car. And all those processes obviously takes time. So it's annoying for both the customer as well as for the company. When we can improve this kind of process, then it's a benefit in time, in terms of time and convenience, but it also reduces the cost of organizing and managing this whole process. If there are cost savings, we cannot say, we don't know yet how big will those cost savings be, how well can we integrate into the business logic of, let's say, a rental car company. That's something we are trying to figure out at the moment. But if there is a certain amount of saving time, and in that moment also saving money, then this can be used, so to say, to transform it into an incentive as well for the people. And here we come back to the example I had at the beginning, comparing a secure messenger to WhatsApp. I mean, WhatsApp is easy, and that's why a lot of people use WhatsApp. We want to bring something, this, so to say, ecosystem, or we want to help to grow it by bringing it into the market, but having those incentives for the customer. You can save time, and there will be let's say 5% reduction, something like that, because the underlying processes can be streamlined as well, because the data the car rental company is much more credible. It's perfectly credible at the end of the day. And we hope that this combination, so to say, then will help to create real benefits where people are not like using those those cards where you collect reductions when you shop. You do it today, but you give away a lot of data. The idea is here to help streamline the processes, but preserve the private information of our customers or of the people who join, so to say, this SSI framework, but still be attractive and comparable to state-of-the-art systems. That's what we are aiming for.
Is anybody here that had an issue on his table regarding credentials and regarding how to design them to make them usable for the verifier and to reach zero knowledge proof and to reach GDPR conformity? Is it something that you're interested in, or rather not? If you want, I can offer like a very easy explanation that everybody can understand. Is this maybe of interest? If I adapt the level of complexity for everybody to understand?
My guess is that a good number of people know what a zero knowledge proof is, but maybe discussing the easiest way to get to GDPR conformity might be interesting.
Mm.
Okay, I put it in my simple words. From a philosophical point of view, zero knowledge proof means proving without revealing. So you reach a certain level of trust because the person that needs the trust, this is the verifier, is trusting somebody like an authentication agent that has checked it in the best manner ever. So you can reach this, what I just explained, by design and not by more complex mathematical forms of interactions. So this really happens if you clear your mind, forget some of the things that have always been there in this trust triangle. You just have to add this authentication agent that makes all the difference. The GDPR conformity is reached because we may not do anything, Mike, where GDPR or DSGVO or whatever is concerning the production of processing user data. So we completely just do not do this. So this is the only way to be GDPR conform, is to do not do this and still be able to prove it to a verifier. If you want, I can give you an example on this.
I think the important point, because you mentioned a lot of people know what zero proof is. I completely think that's true, especially for this conference. We are not using CK snarks or something like that, or we at least are not aiming for using that. So our current idea is that the information we store in our credentials is always just a hashed set of the information, like, for example, your age, where you live, things like that. But it's not the clear text information. And obviously the credential is also not stored in the blockchain. It's stored off-chain. The benefit is that then later on, you can go into a shop or a certain place and prove that, for example, you are from southern Germany, because this information is already there hashed. And then the verifier, the shop, can check against your hash the information, and the only, so to say, proof he becomes is whether the information you provided is true or false, without being able to read the detailed information. This is, so to say, the core idea how we try to get around the DSGVO or GDPR conformity at the current moment.
Maybe I can add something here. What we need to reach is that the credential proves something, but the credential is not working with the holder's data itself. So usually it is based on that you do pretty good encryption and you do all of things, but at the end of the day, you work with real customer data. Therefore, you always violate GDPR or violate in a way that it's very difficult. If you touch GDPR, then you have to make it possible to re-access data, to delete it, to change it, and so on. This is certain issues that bring the biggest problems and also the biggest possible possible attacks regarding public relations, that it violates certain rights, because from a technical perspective you can just not deliver this in a perfect manner. Therefore, we have to work with in a way where we prove them, but we do not use them. And this is done because we change the real-world attributes into digital credentials that can only be answered with yes, no. Simple one is the person over 18 years old? This is a simple one, but we can also use, and this is what Jochen said, exact credentials. So let's say the Mike Bank wants to give out a loan to Tim Heidfeld, born 2nd of August 1973, and they need to be sure that this is really him and this is the correct address, because if something happens to the loan, they need to, somehow get the money from you. Therefore, they must be very, very strict about this topic. So what we do here is that we have a credential that is exactly answering this question, and it is derived, like with a red needle, from the source, what was the ID, so level state, and it has also been biometrically checked. So it has the highest form there. And in the model that we use, always this happens when you do a deterministic model, and when you work with true or false, usually this opens the door for clear code hacking. This means that let's say when I look at Mike right now, I don't know exactly how old he is, but maybe I would get it right in a range between 10 10 years are 365 days. So maybe if I try it 3,650 times, even with a combination of his first name, his last name, and his birthday, I would finally be able, because the storage is on a public ledger and you can just access it, that I could find it out. And we close this gap that only the verifier receives the amount that is real. So usually it is translated in a way that you say, when you translate it into a true and false credential, that the mathematical answer is always 1. But we are not giving this secret to the maybe hostile attack because we are hiding it in the answer that is given to the verifier. And this enables us to a certain length of the code that we are using. And this is so important because by doing this, we can choose a very fast encryption method, but it's still also there completely secure because of its design that that a hostile attack never knows which answer is real or not. True or not, sorry. Okay, so we are live for 50 minutes right now. Are there any questions?
So on the GDPR, I'm not certain I understand your position entirely because the GDPR does have, I just looked up a quick summary to kind of refresh my memory. It has, it says Article 6 has some conditions that you should meet in order to process data. It doesn't say that that you can't do it at all. It's just that you can't do it unless you can meet the conditions that they specify.
And I understand what you're saying. The vice versa proof is, let's say that if we would have 10 more minutes or 20 more minutes, and if you want, I could take this time, then we could scientifically prove you that the design is in a way that even though if you hack my private wallet, and even though if I would have the code in there, it is not possible for you to unveil the secret. Because to unveil the secret, the mathematical model that we are using implies that you know every real life attribute. So we are just using this for a calculation method, but it's just an abstract abstract combination of numbers and characters, and it is not possible to reconvert. And by this, you get no connection to the GDPR because it's not possible.
Right. So that's the ideal way to handle the GDPR. But yes. There's certain instances where you cannot get around it. You can't be an issuer. You cannot create the credential without having the person's data at some, in an unencrypted form at some point.
And so, example, please.
Well, so let's say that you're the DMV. You're going to issue a driver's license. And so someone has to sit there with a form or an API or something and say, type in, John Doe, born 1962, 6'4", blue eyes, and he's got a normal, commercial, not a commercial, but a normal citizen's driver's license. So someone types that all in, and then you submit the button, and the cryptography code goes whiz whiz buzz buzz ding, and out the other end pops a secure credential that's in one-way hash functions and so on, and that result, that output, is perfectly GDPR compliant because you can't reverse it anymore. But in order to get there, they were handling the data of the person. So GDPR says you can handle the data if you meet certain conditions, but the ideal situation for an issuer or a verifier is to say, you know what, we don't really need to worry about the GDPR because we're not currently touching, handling, or storing that data. But there are cases where GDPR does have some, some effect, right?
We are not handling it because we only work with yes/no questions, and we never store the real data. And in this generation process, to make this only like mathematically possible, okay, this deterministic connections, they never leave the box. With the box, I mean the hardware software thing that I described in the beginning. What is the gateway from real life plastic and paper credentials onto the chain? I don't know whether you have already been there then, Mike, because this is one of the key things to make it possible and not to depend on the issuer, that he at some day will also present me as a holder credentials in a level that I need. We make it independent. We give this power directly to the holder because he has the paper and plastic, and we just enable credentials. We just make it possible that he can store it on any DIT, whatever he wants.
I think the point, Mike, you mentioned, I mean, one of the points you mentioned obviously is definitely true. It has to be processed somewhere at a certain point. What we really try not to do is to take care about storage, obviously not in clear text or anywhere, because from our current understanding, this is, so to say, where the trouble probably can start. Because when we store it somewhere, we also have to make sure that we can delete it. And then depending on the database we choose, if it's a real public database, we might not even have the control to delete it. So, I mean, this is, I think, also one of the well understood general problems of SSI infrastructure. How can you delete data? How can you drop data? And therefore, and this is what Tim explained. Therefore, we say whenever we store something, so obviously we try to store as less as possible on any public ledger. But if there is something stored, obviously it will never be clear text. I mean, for the DIT, there is no need for clear text, but also for the credentials, we don't want them to contain any clear data. This is the approach we are trying to do, but we try not to do it with a zero knowledge, because from our current understanding, that's more suited to questions like, do you earn more than 50, 60, 70, whatever money? But for the use cases we are aiming for, it's also important to know where do someone live, where was he born, where did he study, and so on. So not all of the information snippets which are relevant in, let's say, your daily interaction can be stored with this CK-SNARK approach. And that's why we try to figure out, and this is what Tim explained, this is why we try to figure out how can we handle, yes, store, yes, but store it in a way where we have as less possibility of having kind of an attack surface when it comes to GDPR or any sort of, let's say, data breach. This is, so to say, the underlying, could call it the underlying architectural approach or what we try to achieve with our system, that this sort of security is by design. So even if things break, they will not break in a bad way. That's what we are aiming for.
Yeah, obviously you want to use encryption when you're transferring data. You want encryption at rest if you have to store it. You want a zero knowledge proof if it's the type of proof that's conducive to that. You want to be GDPR compliant in every place. You want the whole system, it's kind of like designing a nuclear power reactor. You want it to melt, to not melt down. You want the default state to be unreactive, or in the case of data, you want the default state for it to be useless for an attacker, or for it to not be there to begin with. So I just wanted to go over the nuance just a little bit, because there are, like we discussed, you have to start with unencrypted data at some point, but you don't have to propagate it or store it.
This is true. This is true. We have the complete real data in our hands for a moment in order to do this conversion process.
Yeah.
True.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know.
Any other questions?
I just want to add one thing to Mike, just that you have this understanding, because you mentioned encryption 2 times. We are hashing, and then this hash is encrypted.
Yeah.
And the secret that needs to be revealed is in a function, and this result is only given to the verifier. Therefore, by this clear text attack, they can never find out how old Mike is, because there is maybe never a yes or never no.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, big mistakes we did so far on our journey? Red flags? Because actually that's really what, I mean, now we are pretty small round, but what we are really here for is to really get the feedback, or if someone has the idea, okay, you guys are completely on the wrong track. We don't want to be on the wrong track. So all your questions, Mike, thanks a lot. I mean, this is exactly what helps us to navigate into the right direction, because it's still a very open and evolving system, and it's not obvious how you do things. That's also part of the challenge, so to say. It's part of the excitement, but it's also part of the challenge. Okay.
You have been a very respectful audience. Thank you that we had one complete hour of your valuable airtime. I'm taking away the wish from Mike to share a use case list in order to just share how the holders views on those positive use cases, so that you may use it. And I just wanted to repeat that we would be very happy if it helps your business model, if it helps to reach something that you want. If you want to use this credential model, feel free to use it. We are also there to give you a technical or a mathematical or a philosophical explanation, or also coding guidelines or whatever, in order to make it work. Just that you understand that we are also here to give something back for the incredible amount of groundwork that you have prepared.
Okay, wonderful. Then thanks for the nice closing words. Everyone who's still there, thanks for your time. It was a pleasure for us. It was our first gig here at this convention. And now let's jump to the next meetings. So really curious. And for any further questions, don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you. Bye-bye.